however you happen to be watching this, however you happen to be listening to this, I'm your host, Kay Asante, for a special episode. And this is spoilers, as you saw with the splash screen there. This is spoilers for South of Midnight. Myself and my co-host and the community at GCP as a whole thought that the game deserved more than just a quick review score. So we thought we'd sit down and have some conversations and really dig deep on what we liked, what we didn't like, and maybe some of the messaging and the cultural references that bring forth in this game. And with that discussion, I have two great community members to get their thoughts on that. And first and foremost, of course, it's the elusive one, the one who advocates that you not find him, the one who always seems to be in our Discord. We don't know how he gets there, but we appreciate him being there all the time. And when we ask him to come on, he comes on and he brings with him some very good thoughts. Mr. Lucius Augustus, good day, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I've enjoyed South of Midnight, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. And of course, the one and only. Now, I can't do this without this man, because this game specifically and its musical nature requires us to have this man on here. The one and only Mr. Infinite Umbra. What's going on, sir? How you doing?
Well, Umbra will be here in the morning. You know I have to come through for this, man.
Maybe we could just do it that way so that there'd be no copyright strikes. That'd be good.
Yeah, that's it. We're gonna have us a music off discussion. That's what we're doing. We should get you oil your pipes. Me and Kay, we ready. Hold on, pause. That doesn't sound right.
Wow.
And it come off right at all. My apologies. Now, happy to be here with you fellas to discuss this this experience. I wouldn't say, but this game. Yeah.
Excellent. No, so thank you guys so much for agreeing to have this discussion with me. Again, like I said, I thought beyond the review and those who are watching this or listening to this for the purpose of a review from GCP, I'll tell you right off the top, like I gave it an 8.5. Right off the top, that is our score, and we'll get into why that is our score, but we feel like this game deserves more than just the score. So we wanted to come and dig through it and talk with the people who themselves have played it, beaten it, and have thoughts about it. So I think we should structure this in and we'll start at the top and we'll get as deep as you guys want to go as far as the lore and all of that. But for viewers and listeners, you've been warned once, twice, and the final time. This realm is beyond this realm will be full spoilers. So, all right, let's get this thing started. And honestly, gentlemen, I don't want it to be as structured as it tends to be with the, I ask you a question and you answer it in that way. This is a spoiler discussion, so let's have a discussion. But I'll start with the question at the top, which is, and I'll start with you, Infinite Umbra. We'll start with you and we'll just kind of get into it. How did you first interface with this game? Obviously there was a trailer, it came out, Microsoft showed it off. Like, when was the first time you saw this trailer? And when you did, was it something you initially wanted to get your hands on, or like what's your experience with this game before you even got your hands on it?
Well, just seeing it introduced at Microsoft's game show, I forget, when was this, a year ago too? I think it was 2 years ago now, right? The first time they showcased it there, and initially, I was like, not even initially, immediately I was like, oh, I like where they're going with this, right? We started seeing a new slew of games they had coming out, just speaking from a perspective of an Xbox gamer, right? We saw a bunch of new great IP coming out. We've heard rumors of what Compulsion was working on, but we had never fully actually seen it. And we started seeing the logo work of South of Midnight, stuff like that, and then we finally actually saw like a CGI representation. Then we actually saw gameplay, and that's when my eyes opened up wide, right? Because now we revealed the Unreal Engine 4. I believe they use Unreal Engine 4 for this. And I'm me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a shield for Unreal. I didn't even try to rhyme that. That's just a natural blackness right there. But that's when I first noticed it. It was I was like, wow, this looks really, really good. And we Microsoft doesn't typically give us, this third person over the shoulder perspective type gaming. They typically don't have that in their I don't want to say their repertoire, in their catalog. So this was good to see
Mm-hmm.
this difference, and so that's when it really took hold to me. And then seeing Hazel, and
Mm-hmm.
and the one thing that's sad to say still to this day is that we don't get enough black representation as far as black women in gaming like this, lead characters. So that was really cool to see as well. So that's what really
Yeah, man.
got me. It was the black representation, also seeing it in beautiful Unreal Engine, and a third person over the shoulder esque adventure platformer. All those things really pushed me to wanting to play this, and I'm really glad I did.
Excellent. How about you, Lucius?
This game, obviously, from a representative standpoint, I wanted to play it, but I wasn't necessarily very excited for this game. And I am pleased to say that I was pleasantly surprised at everything that the game had available for me. We'll get into that later on, but this reminds me of the experience that I had with Hellblade 2. Hellblade 2 was not a game that I was really looking out for. I knew that people spoke about the quality of the studio and what they've done in the past, but I wasn't necessarily looking forward to that game. It was in Game Pass. I had the ability to be able to play it, and it was incredible. Very much enjoyed Hellblade 2 in the same way that I enjoyed this. So, and I say all that to say sometimes it's the pleasant surprises that can really show you what this industry can be about, because expectation can be the thief of joy a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So great things like this that for me, I expected them to show up, but I didn't expect them to show up with this level of quality and gravitas. So shout out to the studio for what they've done. We'll get into everything that we've loved about it, but yeah, excellent experience overall. And I came to an 8.5 as well. The game is a relatively short experience, so there are some parts of it that you could argue, well, maybe they could have made this more complex or whatever. But for sure, for such a short experience, I felt that everything that they did inside of the game made sense for the time frame that they wanted you to play it.
Excellent. I really like the way you crystallize your thoughts with the length and all of that, because I think that is also pretty pertinent to this discussion, because I know that folks when this whole thing started, people were questioning about the time to completion and the tools you had at your disposal and all of that. So I really do appreciate that you bring that up as well. Ibn Umbra, I have to ask, how long did it take you to finish this game?
So it's really interesting. And by the way, I also gave it an 8.5 out of 10. I think
excellent. Yeah.
Consensus
So we're all in agreement. Yes,
we're all in agreement.
Okay.
For me, it took roughly about 28 hours, and that was because I played through it twice in one sitting. And because I would finish a stage and I would notice, oh yeah, these collectibles I'm missing after seeing the information. I would go back and replay it. So I initially went through maybe 10 chapters before I started, and went right back to 1 and replayed all the way up to 10, and then did the rest the same way after that. So it's about 28 hours now. Brother did doze off a few times from being tired just from work, so my time looks crazy if you look at my stats, but that's not actually representative of what I did. It was about 28 hours roughly for me. Yeah, and enjoyed it all the way, gotta say.
Excellent. How about you, by the way, Lucius? Did you get a chance to play? What's the length of time did you play max out? Did you play more than once? How did that go?
I did not play more than once. I just went through the experience, tried to get as many of the floofs as I possibly could. Some of them I missed, a couple. Some I missed more than a couple. Thankfully, I was able to get most of the health packs. So at some point I'll try to go in and clean up all the achievements or something. I'm not much of an achievement hunter. I kind of like beating a game and then moving on. but I could see myself playing this again. Just that one playthrough though, 14 hours and 53 minutes. And I tried to do as much as I possibly could, and I upgraded everything outside of one ability, and that ability was missing 2 parts to it. So the equivalent of about like maybe 250 floofs is how much I was missing out of the thousands that you were able to get. So I very much filled up my skill tree. So I did most of it. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So with that, let's get into the actual gameplay of it. Right. I want to talk a bit about just it as a game. Right. Obviously, this is what you would call, or what gamers would call, what, double A game by in its feel and its presentation. I think that's a fair assessment of it, right?
It's double A plus, because it's double A when it comes to the gameplay, but some of the finishing touches are definitely more of a triple A feel. Just some of the cutscenes are just incredible looking. The lighting is fantastic. This is, Umbra loves to talk about Unreal Engine, and this is an incredible looking game. And when you find out that it's on Unreal Engine 4, it blows your mind even more. The subtle connection between what you're doing and the music, the interactivity between the world. There were some just some sparks of AAA in there, but yeah, mostly a double title.
Yeah, it's double A, but with AAA presenting areas, I suppose, because the music and as Lucius pointed out, the way that they did some of the cut scenes, and I love the stylized art style because it's going to last, So things of that nature definitely does.
Facial expressions were so incredible.
Yeah, and the voice acting. Let's not forget that part, because that all of those things, and I myself want to get into voice acting, and so all those things kind of, they kind of combine into this nice gumbo. Good, sticking to the southern talk we're doing here, but yeah, they all combine into this delicious gumbo, and it definitely does represent, or at least shows, displays itself as more than double A.
Yeah. So the weakest aspect of this game, for me, and I would ask you guys to weigh in and tell me how you feel about it for you, but for me, even though I would contend that this encroaches on masterpiece levels in certain aspects, the weakest aspect for me was some of the gameplay aspect. Now, elements. Now, let me get into a bit of granular detail, and you guys tell me what you think. I loved the traversal. I loved the formula, the delivery method, if you will, right? Eventually I clocked into I have my battles, I resolve my battles, I get my next drop of my story, which I'm looking forward to. Then it's a game of traversal for a while, and then rinse repeat, right? And it may sound a bit like detrimental or boring, or sounds like I'm saying it in a pejorative sense, but I eventually clocked in and really started appreciating that flow. But even with that said, I would say specifically the combat, some of the combat elements and the combat presentation kind of was the weaker aspects of the presentation for me, right? And now I say that not to say that it was bad, but it was less impactful than the best parts of the game, if you guys can understand what I'm saying. Lucius, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of hard to get into that, because the things that this game does well, it does it so
well. Yes, incredibly well.
It casts a shadow on a lot of other things, and that isn't to say that those things aren't done well, or especially when I speak to the combat. The combat, I felt, was more than serviceable for the short game that it was. It's like unless you're playing the game twice and falling asleep every now and then, like Umbra, it is a 12 to 15 hour experience, and I don't need an overly complex combat system that I won't even be able to truly understand if I only have to play the game for 12 to 15 hours, right? Like if I'm playing the game for like 60 to 100 hours, I want a complex system that continues to grow, and like I can approach it in different ways and it gives me some level of agency. Yes, that's 100% true. But when a game is 12 hours, I need something that I know will work and empowers me at that time. And I felt like the loop that the game had of exploration versus combat versus story, if you used your little line navigation thing, you were able to tell at any point, okay, I'm not in danger, I don't have to worry about anything. My main concern is if I accidentally fall into some water or get hit by like a spike or something like that, then that's going to take away some of my health. But outside of that, I'm just trying to explore. I'm not worried about getting attacked suddenly. The combat areas were very contained, so that way I knew, all right, I need to get serious right now, make sure that I'm doing everything. And the feedback loop, I felt, was very good for a game this short, because the more I explored to collect the floofs, the stronger I got, and that made the combat experiences more fun for me. I think that there's a huge difference that you can see when it comes to early game combat versus mid game combat, when you start gaining more abilities overall, and then end game combat when you actually have more of those abilities kind of fleshed out. You have more tools inside of your toolbox, and each of those tools has a multitude of functions that you could use based off of the way that the enemies are. And so a combat system like that, I'm more than okay with for a game that's only 12 to 15 hours long.
How about you, Infinite Umbra? How are you feeling about the combat? How do you feel about, like, for me, it may be the weaker aspect of what's on offer, but to Lucius's point, I completely agree that weaker is doing a lot of work there, because it's still a great, more than serviceable gameplay experience for me. But to his point, I also felt like it's super, like the aspects that are great are so great that it looms large over the other aspects that otherwise would be cool, but now are less than, because they're not as great as the other aspects. If you understand what I'm saying. How did that grab you?
Yeah, so when it's interesting, because to Lucius' point and to your point, Kay, though it is the weaker point of the game, the combat and the platforming in ways, it's a misnomer, right? Because everything else, other parts of the game is so strong that you can, if we have to pick out points that we say, hey, you can improve on this, though the combat and maybe the traversal could be things you could point to and say this could be better. And it's not to say it's bad, because it's good. The combat is good, the traversal is good. It's not great. It's not redefining anything. It's not, people would say, breaking the mold or anything like that. And I think sometimes people expect that in games like this, and I don't think it's necessary. I think give me a stable game where I can use my combat effectively, get around effectively, and without your game causing me issues and my errors being my own fault. That's where I'm fine with, right? And this game does enough of that. I will say, once you expand on the abilities, to Lucius's point, such as the double dash, I think the double dash is essential.
It's key. Absolutely.
For sure. Because initially when I was dashing, I'm like, I felt like the timing was off, because I'm like, I felt like I should have dodged that, right? Once I got the double dash, all of that was over with. And it's like, okay, I'm good now. As the newest saying is, oh, I get it now. I get it now.
I understand it now.
I understand it now. Now it started to click with me. Now I was like, okay, yeah. So right around the time I got the double dash, my opinion of the combat changed at that point. It was like, okay, I just needed that double dash in my life. I would say though that what I look forward to is the sequel. Hopefully, Microsoft sees this game for what it is, and it's successful enough for whatever metrics they have behind the scenes to say, hey, we want to invest in this going forward. And sometimes it's worrisome because you don't see them invest in the IP they have. And the reason I say that is because as decent as the game is in the combat or whatever, it can be better. So what I would say, for instance, when, like Lucius pointed out, traveling around and you're going to you can press the, clicking the R stick to see the guide or where you need to go. Well, it then makes it obvious. Well, okay, I'll go the other way to find the stuff I need to find, collectibles and etc., which is fine. And because it's also good because you won't skip ahead, which, by the way, just as a heads up, if you move ahead and you go to a cutscene or whatever, you cannot go back and collect a collectible, like a reading collectible, for instance. I had to happen multiple times. I had to restart the stage because of that. So just as a heads up. So things like that irk me because I am an achievement thought. I'm the very opposite of Lucius when it comes to that, and especially for a game I really enjoy. So, when I look at platformers and combat and action in third-person games like this, I look to some of the greats. I look to the Jack and Dexters. I look to the Ratchet and Clanks. Hell, even the Spyros and the Crash Bandicoots. And
let me throw one more in there. Psychonauts 2. Don't sleep on
Psychonauts 2.
That's platform.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel bad that I left it out of there. You're right. Even the Psychonauts 2s. I even love Psychonauts 1, by the way. But
so did I. Yeah, really great. Yeah.
So when you look to those, I say, okay, those are really refined. But those did come in with time, though, right? And a bigger team too, and a bigger budget for all of those I mentioned, literally. So give them more time, and the sequel, I expect them to really improve upon the design here. That's what I would say. But from what they did give us, sure, it's the weakest point of the game, but it's not. But it's not a weakness point of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
And
That's
Microsoft,
right. I understand.
I beseech you. You have a great character with a great setting, good character development, fantastic music, beautiful environment. Do not let this be a one and done. Bare minimum. Like I saw that this game was, and I don't want to get too much into finances and all that other stuff, but like I saw that this game got as high as number 6 in the top selling rank on Steam in the US. That's a big deal. Yeah. That is a good amount of money that they made. I'm hoping that people give this game a chance on Game Pass. I'm hoping that it has all the numbers that it needs, so that way Compulsion can continue working on this exact thing in the future. And obviously, I would love for them to be able to work on other things as well. But I think that they have something here. I think that this is a Oscar bait, quote unquote, sort of game. And I would be surprised if this doesn't get any nod from whether it be the Game Awards or BAFTA or the New York Game Awards, somewhere. I'd expect that this game gets some sort of acknowledgement from someone.
It's 100%. Yeah. At the very least for the music and the voice acting.
I don't disagree with you on that. I don't. Let's round off the gameplay conversation, right? Go here with me, because when I was playing this game, and I agree wholeheartedly with both of your assessments on the gameplay and the aspects of its strength and some of its limited weaknesses that aren't really a showstopper, but it is what it is, right? If I have any criticism of specifically the gameplay mechanics and or the way the gameplay language was delivered to the consumer, it would be in that I wish to inoculate themselves from some of the criticism that I've heard as far as the combat being shallow potentially and one note. I feel like because and just for those who are listening who may not have played this, obviously the gameplay, the growing of your toolkit is very much a 101 gaming trope, right? The more you find the floofs, right? Think of your Crackdown video game or style of game. The more you find those elements in the world, and you search and seek and find them in the various corners and nooks and crannies and places you can find them, it then affords you points to then unlock more capabilities, right? But I guess my criticism, and I want you guys to give me your take on this. My criticism, if I have any, even if the smallest bit, is I've heard a large amount of individuals, a good amount of individuals, criticize the combat for being shallow, and I feel like that tells me they did not do the crackdown thing, which is collect the floofs, which then unlocks all of those capabilities. I know that it was very much spelled out when you started playing the game. It tells you to do that. It basically, it's a gaming element. One of the first things that it does is it collects it, right? But it seems that enough people have said that to where I feel like maybe they didn't take the game's recommendation seriously. What do you guys think? And I guess I'll start with you first, Lucius. What do you guys think of the idea that maybe they should have, instead of tying the unlock of those combat tools to the floof collection, maybe they should have tied it to experience points or something like that? Just by the very nature of contending with the combat, you get better at the combat. Something to show people more of the tool set rather than I hate saying the word locking it behind the floof collection, because it's not really locking it behind it, but clearly it seems like enough people didn't get the formula down. What do you think?
Here's what I'll say. You cannot inoculate yourselves against these reviewers. Reviewers, I wholeheartedly believe, play video games fundamentally different than the average person. They are playing a video game to try to get to the end of it as quickly as possible, so that way they can just give a review, right? It's their job. It's probably not the only review that they have to do. And so because of that, they are not trying to holistically experience a game. So there's nothing that you could have done to make these people collect the floofs more. Sure, you could have changed the progression, but the floofs are there. Their primary function is so that way you can explore the world. So that way you can interact with the notes and see the interesting things that are happening in the world. It's a way to be able to flush out the narrative, to flush out the world, and to kind of interact with Hazel, because after you're reading these notes or like interacting with specific things or something that was hard to get to, Hazel reacts to that in some sort of way. So it's all made to be able to get an additional sense of immersion inside of the world. So if you removed one element from that entire thing, it could kind of break break the kind of three-legged chair that is the loop of exploration. So that I'll say that I really don't want them to get into a point where you're encouraging people to run through your game as quickly as possible. I want there to be a reason for people to stay inside of that ecosystem for a short period of time, enjoy the scene, see all the beautiful sights and sounds that the developer has worked hard on. And as long as you put enough floofs in the primary golden path location, enough so that way somebody doesn't just feel super weak the entire time, then I feel that you've done your job. And this is more of a conversation about how reviewers play games and how they are so, let's say, jaded from their years of reviewing or whatever, that they are not experiencing these things as a piece of art outside of things called Mario, right? That's the only place that suddenly these super cynical reviewers have love in their heart again. It's like suddenly joy comes out of their heart as soon as they're playing Mario or some sort of like Peach game or something like that. That's when they can like suddenly see the wonder in things, but everything else is just super jaded.
So while I agree, I hear your thoughts, and I hear you because I have also seen some of those cynical takes from reviewers. I have also seen like normal gamers give it the shallow combat criticism, and I don't by and large agree with that, right? I think I spoke to you gentlemen and other folks in our community, and we were having the roundtable discussion internally, and we were just discussing how it felt to us for me, if there was ever any time you could even closely resemble the time where you could even lightly start levying the term repetitive to it, it's around chapter 12. And if you know, this thing is a 13 chapter game with a preamble. So it's not really that long, right? So to me, that criticism was not really, it didn't really land, but I did hear others beyond reviewers who you've accurately pointed out, because of their way, the style they review things, maybe this game may not fare well in that way. How about you, Umbra? How do you feel? Is there any criticism you feel? Do you feel that my criticism of maybe them retooling for the purpose of maximum effect was worthy, or are you more worthy pursuit rather, or are you more on the side of Lucius in that, hey man, they did their job, it's just that some people just aren't going to be able to connect with it? What do you think?
I think it's a bit of both, right? And I do agree 100% that, and we've had this discussion before elsewhere, where reviewers, I think, because of time crunch and things like that and having to get to other games, I don't think they get to enjoy games as a gamer like we can, right? And even when I did reviews for games that I have on the GCP blog, for those wondering.
Hey, look at that plug. Appreciate you, sir.
No doubt. And you feel kind of constrained, like, okay, I have to get through this, I have to get to this deadline, I have to write this. I can only imagine how much more pressure it is for people who are constantly in that type of business, and they have to continuously rotate and do this. This is their job, right? So I don't think they have the chance to look at things in a way of just enjoying the experience. I think they look at it as a checklist of things that it didn't do, meet whatever standard necessarily, and it's like, okay, this wasn't as good as this other game here, so no, this is bad. And I think it feels rudimentary almost, right? Like it feels reductive. And to me, the way this game presents, the combat and everything else is just a vehicle to get us to the lore and the story and the characters and the narrative. I look at it different than I think they do. They look at it like, oh, the combat is this one major component. I look at it like the combat is a complement to those things. It's not the main star. It's a side dish. You know what I mean?
This is not God of War. Like,
right.
You have different expectations for different sort of games.
That's a good way to put it. They have different expectations for different games. And on top of that, to Lucius's point, the game is only, you beat it in 14 hours, Lucius. I said 28, but I did play it twice, so that's around that time, right?
I beat it in about 16 hours because my floof hunt was serious. But yes, around 16 hours.
The fluff, I get you.
That's right. I was going for the completion of the floof,
and I feel you, because I did the same. And then of course I replayed chapters that really resonated, which we'll get to multiple times as well. But keeping that in mind, I think that they looked at it like, oh, well, it's not doing this thing. But it's like, I think you all make a great point when you point out this game is very limited in time that it demands from you. And because of that, I never felt like, oh, this is too repetitive. I've played tons of AAA games that or AA, whatever, that are well revered and loved, and the combat this or that is this is that. And it's like, and it's 40 plus hours, but you never really hear that type of repetitive talk for those. And it's simply because it's not that it's not repetitive, because games are repetitive by nature.
Yes.
But it is that you might like that gameplay loop. So I think when people say that this stuff was repetitive or boring, it's just what they really mean is the way the gameplay loop is presented, they didn't care for. That's the way I look at that.
And Kay Asante said something very important. I think because some people weren't on the floof hunt, I think it's very clear.
It limited their scope, right? Yeah. It limited their capabilities. And that's why I had that criticism for them, that maybe they should have, I don't know if they did testing and maybe they the people they tested did not have that issue, but maybe they could have seen that people are not all going to go for the floof hunt. So maybe we have to find some other way to entice them to unlock their capabilities. Because if you don't go for that floof hunt and you follow that line straight to the next beat, next beat, by the time you hit chapter 12, I can imagine same toolkit, same few tools, you'd be bored.
So here's what I would say: an easy way to be able to do this, in where you're not completely destroying the loop of exploration, is if you simply increase the values of each floof is worth. So that way, even if you don't go floof hunting, you're going to run into some floofs every now and then. You're going to be curious. You're going to go into some corners here or there. And if you make it so that way, the locations that people typically go to, instead of that floof being worth 10 or 20, well, let's say it's worth 40 now. And the ones that where you flip like a little piece of metal using the push ability, those are only worth 5. Let's give those 10. Right now, by the time that somebody gets to the end of the game, they would not have to have collected mostly everything or everything to get a full understanding of the thing. Let's just say that they needed to collect, I don't know, 40% of the floofs, and now that unlocks most of the skill tree just with that 40%.
Yeah, that is the point. They could have made it a bit more powerful. Umbra, what about the idea another way? What about the idea of, remember how in the middle of chapter 3, for example, right? And for those who aren't aware, chapter 3 to 4 was the preview build that we received. So if you got a chance, if you were lucky enough to access to the preview, you played 3 to 4. In that chapter, you receive a lot of power, right? You see the ghosts who are escaping slavery, I assume. Are as they leave, they're getting slave hunters. Yes, they were slave hunters. Exactly. I actually read that. I remember reading the notes later. As they're leaving and that's where you learn the wall run. That's where you learn how to glide, all that. What about the idea of giving additional powers in the world by discovering them like that? Like more along the lines of keep giving the player more tools that they discover somewhere in the world. So it continues to promote you exploring, but it's not floofs that eventually turn to something. You can uncover a new power rather than the floofs to get that power. What do you think?
That would have been cool too, right? Like they could have done it where, for instance, you have a boss fight and you learn, because games do that too. So you'll learn in the boss fight you will develop this new power that you can use. They could have. It's a lot of ways they can get us to it. I wasn't mad about how they did it. I think they did it pretty well. But I think if you wanted to play off the thought of she's growing in power as a weaver, they definitely could have had it where you're seeing these things, these spirits and such from the past, Mahalia, and leading people to freedom, a la, Harriet Tubman. Very clear analogy to that. And, it could have led to that as well. And that's what it did. Like roughly when you're following the ghost, eventually you learn the push move.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So they could have done it in a lot of different ways. I think one of the more powerful ways would have been in combat, where you have to dig deep to fight off this big attack that's coming your way or to survive. And they could have done it that way too, but that's fine too. I hear you on that, but I was good with how they presented it, to be honest.
And I also think that, like, some people aren't as imaginative in like a combat scenario. Like they try to essentially do what works all the time rather than trying new things. I don't know if the game ever taught me this. I don't remember, but at some point, the little beehive enemies, the of whatever, and then bees come out of them.
Yep.
At some point, I just used the pull ability to pull a bee out of it, and then I had control over it, and then I used the push ability to shoot the bee at the beehive, and it took damage
and exploded. Yes.
And when I did that, I was just like, oh my god. So that I started experimenting with other ways of kind of the whole thing, and I was like, okay, there's actually a little more here. And I think
they just don't share it with you. They leave it for you to discover.
To discover in some ways. And I think that's really good. And I think that a lot of the things that you're saying, Kay Asante, I think would be good for a sequel, right? Now that Hazel is at this baseline of power from this game, any additional powers that she gets can be things that people find via exploration, because these base power set are things that you'll need to be able to beat the second game. So you can essentially beat the second game just from what you have. But if you want more interesting powers and all this other stuff, explore, find all that stuff, engage with those stories, and you'll be able to do it. And that's a good thing for a future game. I don't know if that would have been the best approach for, its
The
debut.
first one. Yeah. I get you.
And that goes to what I was saying before, where I feel like a sequel, they can expand on a lot of different things, even the exploration bits. Because if I did have to levy one other negative, I would say is that due to the game being, constricted to AA, and not likely having a super big budget to do so much more, the exploration is limited. I would also say that's by proxy of Unreal, in which you heard me mention before, where the Anvil engine, for instance, allows for a beautiful world and a very large world. Unreal is more.
Hold on now. Did I just hear Infinite Unreal Umbra promote a different engine? That is Unreal? That's not Unreal? What?
You can edit that out, right? You can edit that part out.
No, that part is going to be clipped and be used over and over again, sir.
In your defense, this is an Unreal Engine 4 game, not an Unreal
4, yeah.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
But I would
hey,
say
man, Lucius, you are my witness. You heard him, but continue. Go ahead, Umbra.
That was crazy.
Let's edit that part out. I don't want the checks to stop coming. But yeah, just one of the things I would say is just I want them to expand on that. That's the thing that gets me, is like playing games like this, and that's why I was so invested in getting the achievements too, because I'm invested into this character, I'm invested into this world, and I want them to do more going forward. I want more. I want them to really go all out, and I think this could be a worthwhile IP for just in gaming. You know what I mean?
All right, I completely agree. And for anybody who has played and beaten this game and is listening to this, we've been burying the lead the whole time, right? We've been talking around all the parts that are a game and are worthy of criticism, and we have left what I think is the masterpiece as the final part. Let's talk about the narrative. I think the narrative is one of the best things I've played in gaming in a long time. Chapter 11 had me in tears. I had to put the controller down. I had to step away for some time. Those who know me know that I have historical and cultural reference points to the South and African culture, African American. I'm an African myself, obviously. So some of the historical reference points and some of the fables they told and some of that stuff hits home with me, because some of those I've either heard whole cloth or in a way. It's kind of like they took some creative liberties, but there's some basis in the stories that are told in my country. So for me, this game rose beyond the level of 10 out of 10, specifically in the narrative and how it was delivered and the subject matter and the difficulty with which it dealt with it, and still was respectful and just unbelievably poignant with the various stories it told. So this time I think I'll start with Lucius. So let's start with you, sir. I know you played this thing to its completion. I requested that you did so before we had this conversation. I know that it grabbed you at a certain place as well. I'll let you take this any way you want, sir. How did you feel about the narrative and how they constructed it and delivered it to you?
It's good. It's very good. I thought, there's just so much, right? Because you have the relationship between Hazel and her mother, and the thing as it's very interesting because as you get the perspective slowly of Hazel's mother and what she has to do for her job, how it emotionally impacts her, how she doesn't want that to be brought into the home, so that way it affects the way that Hazel's kind of able to live her life, the compromises that you kind of have to make as an adult to be able to continue to survive and hopefully do good for other people. Seeing there's so much. One of the scenes that hit me a lot was at the end, actually. Now, obviously, chapter 11 really emotional. The Benji one was also really emotional, like that, just pure betrayal issues, all that. Like, I had just a little bit of time that I had to take after every single chapter, because every single thing had like a very human emotional element to it. But at the very end, where, if you've been paying attention, if you've been reading the notes, you saw what happened with with Molly and all these kids, and the kid that was left behind, and all this other stuff, Itchy, and all of that. You really have a good understanding of that. And then you remember that at some point, Molly took Hazel's dad, because of, the way that Bunny, as they call her, which is hilarious, by the way, but Bunny said something that was like, pretty crazy, but she was just like, no, I loved my child so much, I did X, Y, and Z. Why is it that I lost my kid, and those people down there who fucking hit their kids in the fucking street? But this is what she said, right?
That's what she said. Yes.
Why is it that they get to keep their kids? Why is it that they get to? And it just really hits you about the unfair nature of life. And like, Bunny is obviously in a lot of ways the antagonist of the story, but it just reminds you that it doesn't matter how much love and dedication that you could put towards something, the universe can be incredibly cruel to us all. And in that way, you kind of have to give some people a little bit of space, a little bit of something, because we're all kind of going through the insanity that is life, that can be incredibly unfair and harsh suddenly to anyone.
Yep. Absolutely. Lucius.
And Bunny, with how powerful she is, and how much like money she has, and the influence she has inside of that place, even her, she was suffering just like anybody else. It was incredible.
Umbra, what do you think? What are your thoughts on how that narrative has been delivered? I know you were rather partial to the boss fights, and were they really boss fights? Like the narrative emotional beats that came with the boss fights and post the boss fights, and how she corrected, like, to me, genius level delivery. What are your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, the beautiful thing about this is it's deeper than the surface would have you believe. And you're right, the boss fights only in the gaming, terminology, right? But really, she's contending with I guess unraveling the pain and grief and all these different things and sorrow from these different people. For instance, we go to Laurent and him being the Rougarou, which, by the way, is a real Southern myth, but it's actually a werewolf. So they changed it up a bit to make him an owl.
Yeah, they have taken some liberties with a few different bosses. Yeah,
they did, which was fine. I didn't mind that.
Yeah,
and you see his past, and through her powers that she has, the with being a weaver. So you see that the trauma that led him to what he became, and how his father was killed trying to defend him, but also going through the grief he was suffering because of his wife's eventual death and illness leading to it. And the man responsible, or at least not the man responsible, but the man who hired him, not being willing to do for him and give him money or allow for him to cash out on certain things. And it just, her health continued to deteriorate, and it led him to alcoholism, which also affected Laurent negatively. and he was taught, of course, something that a lot of black men in general are taught in not displaying emotion, and that we have to be stoic, even in happiness. And it's led to a lot of disastrous situations for us. And you see that with LeBron, who's a pretty steadfast man running a juke joint, which is also classic throwbacks to black culture. And this man he had the slickest finger waves in the game.
I saw that. Yes, sir. Indeed, he did.
Classic man. And it was really cool about LeBron too, aside from the visual styling of him, is that he's dressed like he's back in the 1920s and 30s. If you notice that, and it's because he's from that era. You know what I mean? He literally is from that era. He's just long lived due to the curse on him.
Yep.
Things like that are really cool. You see the trauma and everything with what Hazel is going through, because it's almost like, and I said this before, it feels like initially when her mother is whisked away with the house and she's trying to save her. It almost feels like you're transported to this Wizard of Oz. Like it almost feels like you're in a different land. It almost felt
the game has a lot of Wizard of Oz vibes.
Yeah, I was thinking closer to Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland, even. Bridge of Terabithia. Either way, it has a lot. It does feel like you're in a different world almost in this kind of way.
Yeah, and absolutely.
So going through that, and you're playing with Hazel, and you're seeing her strength as a character. You see she has this spunkiness about her, this sass about her, as me and Lucius were talking about before, and and you see her strength in character. You see that she's not so tough because a lot of people complain about the lack of feminization in female characters. Well, she's still feminine, but she's still strong. You know what I mean? They don't dilute that in either direction. And you see her having to go through this and suffer through this to make sure that she can rescue her mother. And while doing that, she comes across haints, which is a real thing in the rural South, by the way, which are, evil spirits or representations of, what's the word I want to use here? Representations of restless spirits and things like that because of trauma, past traumas tied to that area. And KB, you were talking about that before, and how the haints are representations of the slaves that may have manifested in those areas and went through such anguish, right? And when
they pointed that out, it threw me, bro. I was like, oh, so this is the kind of game we played. Okay, like wow, y'all are not shying away, and I think I've asked that question a few folks who played it, which is like, did you get that? Because a lot of people didn't get it. I feel like they subtly dropped it and then they moved on, right? Yeah. She touches down on the floor. She says, "I hate when I come here." And then the little hint thing, the little lore thing comes up, and if you read it, it tells you all about those areas. I'm just like, wow, like
about the slave quarters and such.
Even if I have criticism of the cordoned off combat zones, that narrative framing covers it completely. It makes me understand it. Like it was,
and there are some areas that not necessarily tied to slavery, right? You might have the Tom area, for instance.
Exactly. Or any other kind of injustice or restless spirit that has kept itself there to ravage the land. Yeah, absolutely.
And I love the way they weaved in these myths and legends and from the lore from the South, and a lot of these are real. I think Benji was the only one they actually created. Even the Altamaha, by the way, is actually real. I looked into it.
It's real. Yeah. I looked it up as well. Yeah. And that's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing that I feel like this game really spoke to. Like it and that to me is where I give it the 10 out of 10 masterpiece level stuff. It makes you look things up. It makes even you who may have a reference point, it may touch home with you, but it may have something in it that you could still learn, that could still teach you something. So Lucius, I will ask you this question: who is this game for?
I think it's for everybody. It's a very human. It's a very human story. It's not just like a black story. It is a story told for humans. It's a very human experience. The only difference is that the main characters are just a bunch of black people, and there's some white people there too, if that's what makes you comfortable. But like at the end of the day, it's a story about humans. It's a story about generational trauma and whether or not to pass that generational trauma down to the next generation. Like almost every single one of the stories was about inside of South of Midnight was about that sort of generational trauma, parents passing down their like faults to their children and it dramatically impacting them, the mother obviously wanting to avoid that, not letting her job of seeing kids in some of the worst situations, things that would just make you want to break down, and having to get home and be 100% on the up and up, so that way this doesn't affect her daughter. That has to be a conscious decision that's incredibly difficult to something that you have to do every single day. And at the end of the game, when the mom literally hands the baton both figuratively and literally to April, that is her passing all the generational knowledge and all the wisdom and all the everything that's necessary to be able to succeed without any of the trauma. They were like that last boss, as I know that both Everborn and Umbra kind of had issues with the way that last boss was executed. But if that last boss is a signifier, a representative of trauma as a whole, being able to defeat that thing before passing your child the baton so that way they can defeat their own demons is incredibly indicative of the entire story that was trying to be told throughout South of Midnight. And I think that they did a very, very good job. The story, especially if you were paying attention, is very good. It's heart-wrenching at some points, but it's stories that need to be told, because if you don't know some of the worst aspects of humanity, then you are doomed to repeat that thing. But you also stop yourself from knowing the true beauty of humanity as well, because sometimes, like in the worst situations, is where you'll see people being the most gentle and most like compassionate to each other. And I think that those moments are important to highlight.
I agree wholeheartedly. So Lucius and Umbra, at this point, I think we're at the 60-minute mark. I wanted to keep this nice and short and concise. We're at the time where I think we should give our final thoughts on this game, and I'll start and I'll go around and we can go ahead and give our thoughts, and then we can leave it there. Honestly, I think this game is incredibly important in this day and age, especially in the world where a game comes out, unless it meets a certain criteria, people are quick to pick up the pitchforks and try to downplay what it's trying to say or what it's trying to do. Honestly, this game. So, a quick analogy: a buddy of a story, rather. A friend of mine, a community member in our network that we communicate with, a friend of mine, I saw in the DMs having a heated debate back and forth with other folks, right, about a game that he was playing, and the way the game looked, the way that people were being represented, it just didn't look right to him, and he felt the need to talk about it, right? And this person that I'm talking about himself is not black, but the characters that were being misrepresented were black, and he felt the need to speak on it. I feel like that is what moves that kind of those issues, specifically racially and all that, forward when people that don't look like you are talking about issues that concern you. And this game is exactly that. And I'm not saying that the game was not made by people that look like us or not look like us, because it was, as I understand it, it's a full team with lots of people from different backgrounds. And shout out to the great Chris Fox, who's on our show and lent his voice and told us some of the pieces of the puzzle that he was representative of in that amazing soundtrack and the voice and the audio work that went on there, right? But as he even explained it, this was a brainchild of the game director, you know, a Caucasian man who basically lived his life and grew up in the South. And I'm saying, I don't think I've ever seen a game represent in recent history anyway, represent the diaspora, the past, the present, and the future of that Black culture, swag, the elements, just that X factor, so well represented, like so well, to the point where I don't think I can't point to another game that does that. I can point to Horizon Forbidden West and all of that for having games that show, that visually represent Black people in a certain way, and they did that expertly there. But I feel like South of Midnight, beyond the visuals, took it a step further by really crystallizing the experience and showing who they really are and why you should care. That's how I feel about it. And that's why I feel like it's super, super important that people play it and talk about it once they're done playing. Infinite Umbra, sir, I will let you be the next one. What do you think of this game? And by the way, we gave it short shrift in the soundtrack and the music department, so please
best believe I'm not going to leave that out. I was making sure of it. And one of the most powerful things in many cultures that all unite us, you know, and this is one thing we can speak to that says this game can be for everyone. You just have to open your mind to that and be willing to step out of your comfort zone of the norm for you. This is the norm for us. So we were just at home here, and that's why it felt so good for us, right? And we felt good because they took the time to actually reach out to people in our diaspora and say, hey, what can you tell me about this? We want to get your expertise. We want to take this in and put this as a part of the game. They reached out to people in the South for this game. They researched these mythical creatures and that we come across, from Mali, you know, to Rougarou, to the catfish, which is also a mythical legend in the South, by the way. Gigantic catfish. I wish they would have gave him a name though. To Shaken Bones, you know, was it?
Oh man, Shaken Bones, my favorite character. Like, I wish they had done far more with that character. He's so cool.
I loved him, but you know what he was a callback to, right? He was a callback to Robert Johnson, which was a crossroad, you know, from Crossroads, who sold his soul to the devil, etc., etc. He's a call back to that. Follow the river. He, like, all of these things, even going to my favorite story, which was chapter 11, and us coming across Ayatunde and her son. We'll just call him Honey for purposes because we knew no other name, and them being reunited and tying in, you know, our people going through adversity and slavery back in the day, to Ayatunde jumping off of that boat to escape to freedom, to where, you know, Mahalia and everybody else established a colony in the swamp, to losing him literally in the 1800s and not finding him until you come through with Hazel. And we hear this, you know, this one of the most beautiful and haunting sounds in the entire game, where they're leading up to this whole time where you're hearing these more or less slavery hymns, where they're throughout the whole entire level. And then when you're getting closer and closer, and what this game does really well is it builds upon that, and it'll start off slow, be there, and then when you get to her and she finally turns around and notices Honey is her child she's been searching for all those literally hundreds of years, the music kicks in, and she's she's literally singing to him, to her child, and she's, Mama will be there in the morning. Beautiful. Literally brought this grown black man to tears. I didn't think it was going to happen, and I was warned about this beforehand, and it still got me. It speaks
It
to
was
so much of
powerful,
that.
bro.
Powerful.
Oh.
Yeah, super. It was so powerful. Kay, as you know, I sent you the clip. Like, look at this. You know?
Yeah.
And I replayed that stage 3 times just to come across that and see it again. And you know, the representation here is valid, is needed. There aren't many black leading characters like this, and for them to tell such a story like this, I think it took a lot of guts, and I applaud Compulsion for that. We need more of this. This game is important. I agree with you 100%, and I hope people really take the time to give it its due and play it and enjoy the experience versus looking for things to complain about. That would be my biggest takeaway.
Wonderfully said, sir. Lucius, sir, take us out. What is your thoughts?
This game is exactly what we should be advocating for. A well-priced, well-executed, short experience that allows for developers to be able to experiment, bring new ideas into the fray, and move on to new things. South of Midnight, if we could find a way to, condense it, make sure that like we can clean up some parts of development so that way it can happen faster. These are the sort of games that we need in between the large Call of Duties, the Starfields, the Outer Worlds 2. These are the types of games that we need in between those larger experiences that really get into the kind of Art Deco way of the world. I loved how this game looked. I loved the music of this game. A lot of people complain that the combat, but I love the combat, and I have plenty of video evidence showing me play the combat early game, mid game, and then late game, and all of those are kind of different experiences because I have different tools in my toolbox. But I enjoyed it the entire time, and it was a short period of time, so I don't know. I walked away with an 8.5, and the only reason why I didn't give it a 9 is because I felt that some of the chase experiences in the game weren't up to snuff. When I think about some of the best chase experiences in a video game that's not like a horror game or something like that, I think about like a game like Ori. And when you're being chased by the things in Ori, you can see it takes up so much of the screen. You're constantly afraid. Now, maybe it's difficult because of the angle in which it's third person. You're running behind it. But I remember playing as like Nathan Drake in Uncharted, and that's kind of generally the same viewpoint. And they were able to make kind of those chase scenes kind of exciting as things were falling apart around you. So I would say that for me, that was probably the weakest element of the game. Even when I enjoyed the platforming aspect of it, like I was just like, oh, I'm just getting some good platforming in right now. But I wasn't afraid of dying, if that makes sense.
True. I would agree with that as well. I was also not afraid of dying. And I think Everborn also, he and I talked about that as well, that, it would have been most likely maybe a little bit better if you could turn around and see the thing coming for you, and that might have been a bit more menacing and giving you a bit more stakes. But I do hear you. By and large, though, I think we're all in agreement that this thing needs to be played by as many people as possible. I think that's it. Yeah, I agree with you, and I hope that more people got a chance to play it. I hope that if you were listening to this, that you got a chance to play this and you played it to its fruition before you had a chance, before you watched our coverage of it, before you listened to our discussion of it. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, go on your favorite social media network and at Compulsion Games and thank them for creating such a great experience. So I think that's it for us. Lucius Augustus, man, thank you so much. You always lend such great gravitas and intelligence to our proceedings when you are able to join us. Tell the fine people where they can potentially come across your avatar and where you have omnipotent powers, sir.
The only place that you can find me is in the GCP Discord. Please do not look for me anywhere else. That is all.
That is all. And the man, the myth, the Met legend himself, Mr. Infinite Umbra, host of the Fix Thursdays on the Infinite Umbra YouTube channel. Sir, where can people keep up with your ongoings, sir?
Yes, follow the river to Twitter. You can find me on Twitter. Yes, Infinite Umbra or Umbra Infinite everywhere on social media. And of course, on Thursdays, as Kay alluded to, on the Fix with myself and Daniel J. McG on Thursdays at 8 o'clock Eastern. I have a bevy of other shows I'm on, but that'll be the one I'll leave for now. Hopefully you guys come by and support if you're not already doing so. And yeah, we have great conversations about everything in media. It doesn't have to just be games. It could be movies, TV shows, wrestling, as I like to say. All these things. So come by and kick it with us sometime.
You can find me, Mr. K. Asante, and my co-host, Mr. Everborn Saga, every Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on, of course, the Gaming Circle podcast. But this has been it for the spoiler discussion of South of Midnight. Thank y'all, and keep it gaming. Peace.